Welcome back to my channel. While I talked a lot about censorship from the left in my last video, there is much more to point out. I'm not saying there aren't issues on both sides, or that there should be no limits on speech, but I do intend to show that at the very same time the Democrat left is whining about censorship, they are actively censoring, and have been for a long time, in very dishonest ways. I pointed out in the past one way this has been going on for all my life, like news panels on TV. The typical makeup of these panels would be to have one person who may be relatively conservative against three or more on the liberal left side. But it's actually worse than that. Look at the ABC show called The View, which has 6 women on the panel with, surprise, a minimal conservative representation. I looked at the present numbers and, using AI search, it listed 3 as liberal and 1 as moderate liberal. But what about the other 2? Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Here's what the search came up with. The most prominent conservative voice on the panel, Griffin, is a former Trump administration official who has since been critical of the former president. She has revealed that she voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. So the most prominent conservative is not only critical of Trump, but voted for the very liberal Democrat for president. How convenient. And the other one? A political strategist. Navarro is a longtime Republican who is known for her outspoken criticism of Donald Trump. So, just another panelist that will agree with the liberals. The purpose of such so-called conservatives is to criticize the administration, thus adding credibility to the rants of those on the left. This scenario is a Democrat left definition of diversity and balance. Not only minimize conservative voices, but pick ones that would be more likely to speak out against the Republican president, which is probably why Senator John McCain's daughter was chosen for the conservative voice previously on The View, because McCain hated Trump. The left loves to talk about diversity of race, sex, nationality, but not diversity of thought. It's why Biden could say this.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
A white guy deciding if a black person qualifies as black? That's pretty racist. Before someone says he was just making a bad joke, there have been other cases where if a black person was conservative, they'd be accused of not really being black or not being authentically black. So this is not an isolated case. Here's another way government censorship was attempted. After Fox News started and attracted a big audience, breaking the domination of ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, CNN, and MSNBC, the Democrats started saying the government needed to control the media. Every single time they specified anyone, it was only Fox News and talk radio, the only exceptions to the bias of the left. So, benefiting from the bias of 6 major TV networks wasn't good enough for the Democrats. They were targeting the only sources that weren't biased in their favor. Oh, I know there'll be some knee-jerk reactions saying those 6 networks are fair. But just look at the clips I posted with the media reactions to Charlie Kirk or what Kimmel said, and then try to find examples of such blatant bias in favor of conservatives from those same networks. If they will lie and twist things so obviously, why would you believe anything they say? Let me make an important point here. It would be great to have unbiased media. That will never happen. So we need the next best thing, and that is to have many different political views with their biases, so it at least somewhat balances out. But the Democrats didn't want that at all. But that's nothing compared to what we've seen in more recent years. How about the admissions from Google and Facebook, amongst others, admitting the Biden administration pressured them to take down videos and posts the Biden administration didn't like? How about the old Twitter removing Trump? None of that was objected to by the Democrat left. You know the excuse the Democrats will use? That they were just stopping fake news, which, again, only they get to define. It's pure censorship that the left wanted. Where was Jimmy Kimmel then? I have more. How about when the IRS, under Obama, hardly approved any Tea Party groups for tax benefits leading up to an election. Their excuse was that they didn't approve some liberal groups either. Do you see the problem? We expect some groups on both sides to fail to qualify, but there is a huge difference between some liberal groups being denied and almost all Tea Party groups not being approved. But it was actually worse. The IRS didn't just deny them. You see, that would then allow for an appeal. No, the IRS stalled and just sat on applications. Thus, no appeal could even be made. That's a deliberate tactic to censor opposition, much like when Stalin used a paper shortage to give opposition newspapers much less paper than those who supported him. That doesn't even factor in asking questions of these groups which should not even be asked, like the names of donors, etc. Gee, I wonder what a politicized IRS could do with those. Some groups just have a special privilege to not be offended, and they pretty much automatically say they are offended by anything they don't like. Thus, instant censorship. Newsflash, there is no right to not be offended. Common sense should tell you that if you can't say something that might offend someone else, then you literally do not have free speech. I'm offended by lots of things the opposition says, yet that's apparently okay as I'm not in a protected group. You can say negative things about whites or men or Christians, but don't you dare say anything negative about protected groups. So much for equal rights. Somehow calling a person Hitler or fascist or Nazi apparently isn't hateful, but saying a biological man can't become an actual woman and have babies is supposedly hate. Another bogus way of rigging debate is to force you to pay, via taxation, for media that supports the view of the Democrats. Thus, they will always say you must fund PBS, even though they mostly side with Democrat left viewpoints. It also happens with unions. While historically, most unions have overwhelmingly donated to Democrat candidates, almost 40% of union members are Republicans. Yet their union fees are used to fund the opposition almost exclusively. Worse is that the Democrat left use power to force submission. If you don't agree with their pronouns, they try and often succeed in taking your job. You see, they'll protect Jimmy Kimmel, even when he flat out lies, but not your speech. Or they'll try to take your kids if you don't affirm their gender, even though most people know kids go through phases where they'll believe all kinds of, well, childish things, including thinking they are animals. Or schools taking kids without parents being informed for gender-affirming treatments. For people who pretend to be concerned about fascism or Nazism, they might remember that a key effort those groups made was to replace parents with the power of the state. How did we get to such a bad situation? Well, one step was when they decided to make hate speech a category, subject to additional punishment. This was not a good idea. First, we have the obvious. You should be punished for what you actually do, not for whether you hate a group or not. If a certain punishment is considered appropriate for a robbery, mugging, whatever, then that's all that matters. But once you say you can add to the punishment based on thoughts, then it becomes an easy step to punish the thought in advance. And that's exactly what we are seeing, and it's going to get worse. The pattern goes something like this. Step 1, demonize people for using hate speech, which is really just speech the left doesn't like. Step 2, actually call for the censorship of those who are conservatives. This was successfully done with Facebook, Google, and the old Twitter at the request of the Democrats. Step 3, when a conservative whose point was that open debate is important, but he is assassinated, say he had it coming. Step 4, when a leftist says something outrageous and is simply suspended, whine about losing their free speech. Step 5, when challenged on their contradictory position, declare it doesn't apply to hate speech. Step 6, essentially declare that it is only the left who gets to define what hate speech is. Very convenient. One might say it is something fascists would use as a tactic. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.